to the last video that will conclude this in-depth analysis of the Night Below campaign. If you managed to follow through all the videos of this behemoth of an adventure, I do not have the words to thank you. If you stumble upon this video for the first time, I would suggest you first watch the 3 parts of the series and then return for this final showdown. A small note before we continue: an adventure that has so many enemies packed in such a small area has the risk of being a repetitive slaughterfest, with constant battles that might lead to a boring experience for your players. Reading this part with great detail, understanding where is everyone and why, will allow you to spice up your game. Leave some room for your players to investigate. Let them try to take advantage against other enemies and their attacks. Have your monsters make mistakes, as your players will most definitely do. There are plenty of role-playing opportunities scattered around this place. Use them to make this ending epic and interesting for your players. Tie loose ends from their background. Use NPCs that your players might have met on the surface and fill in the holes in your stories. So let's move on with the first arc of this final battle. Your players should have returned to the surface to prepare and get ready to head to the harder part of this adventure. Communicating their plans to their allies, trying to gain as many as they can, and saying their farewell to the NPCs that they cannot help them anymore. The Svinfneblin have done all they could for the party by now. The Rockseer Elves, depending the choices of your players, might already have decided to leave the Underdark and meet their long-lost cousins. They will be more than willing to share important information and treasure before they are gone though, especially if your players did the extra mile of guiding them on the surface to meet their long-estranged family. Finally, they are ready to move down inside into the great city of the Aboleth, the City of Shaboath. The victory conditions for your players is very clear. They have to destroy the 4 great towers, they have to destroy the Grand Savant tower, and they have to kill the Darrow Enchanter Darlakanand. Some timekeeping will be needed when the first attack on the city takes place. That attack will be day 0 for your players. They will have 30 days to beat the Aboleths. On the 30th day, the final sacrifice will take place, and the tower will be ready to start dominating the area around it. That means that waves of new enemies, Fomorians, Drow, Darrow, Illithids, Fire Giants, and even worse, will start flooding the city after they have been dominated by the tower. Plus, the players will have to daily try to save against the magic attempting to dominate their minds. Bear in mind, all great campaigns do not have bad endings, only new beginnings. Yes, the Aboleth might win. Yes, the player might even lose their chance to save Harrenshire, and they might even lose some of their friends. Hopefully not all. But still, they will have a brand new goal to tackle. Not easy, of course, perhaps even impossible, but those impossible odds and the dedication and persistence your players have are the best components that great tales are made of. And if you toss a coin to your bard, those tales will be shared to all corners of your world. But I digress. Kuatoa patrols are the first of words your players will have. There are 13 Kuatoa groups roaming the waters. Of course, the Aboleths will actively respond to any attack in their city. Guards are being moved, key locations will be protected, and creatures will be sent for the head of the players. Dealing with a savant that is a divination master means that the location of the players will be known to him at all times. Ambushes, traps, and devastating attacks will be the norm from now on. The imagination of the game master will be the ceiling regarding this. The first response from the Aboleths will take place a day after the second attack of the players make on the city. An elite group of mercenaries will be sent for them. The second response from the Aboleths will be 1d4 + 1 days later. The Grand Savant will summon monsters himself to attack them, and after that there's a 25% per day for a new attack to take place. Grand Savant's one eye will constantly be on the players. The pressure is already starting to build up substantially. Even the terrain itself will start to become an enemy of a sort for the players. Not that the Underdark has been good with the players so far, but still many locations will have specialized magic on it. Things like 75% of teleportation resistance, transmutation resistance will make the moving and even worse the escaping of your players really hard. All slaves are dominated by Aboleths. As many of them are dispelled and saved will grant a hefty amount of bonus XP to the players, and of course there is always a chance of convincing them to help them out. Every fighting hand added to the group will make a huge difference in the end. Entering without violence, it is a possible but not probable scenario. With some successful charms or the Crown of Domination, some windows might be opened. The players will find multiple ways to do something like that. Go with it. Those are the most interesting parts of this adventure. Let them be creative and award them for that. As long as they do not attack and provoke the eyes of the Grand Savant to locate them, they will have free reign to improvise as long as they can. Before entering to the final showdown of the location of the city, the Game Master has to know what are the Aboleths doing at all times. From the moment the players are stepping inside their city, they are dedicating everything they got to complete the tower. They are too close to make a mistake now, so their main focus is there, at least for the moment, which might create some leeway for mistakes from your players. Take that under consideration. So with no further ado, let's go deeper into the second arc of this final battle, the actual city, the city of the Grand Savant. Your players will be welcomed by a 30 feet high, slimy and damp wall that is the base of an anti-magic shell that towers over the city, blocking magical entrance and, most importantly, magical escape. There are many interesting locations with great dangers that lurking in the city. Having already set a huge storyline to find your way here, this will be a perfect place to tie all your loose ends the adventure has created so far. The most notable locations for you to know are the following. The barracks and the watchtowers. They are filled with Darrow and enslaved human fighters. The gate, where Grongor, the human fighter, is inspecting everyone that comes in with the support of inquisitive illithids behind him. The Kuatoa army resting area, which is housing a force of hundreds of Kuatoas, some resting in it, others patrolling the area. The Tower of Distillation, where a Savant Aboleth is working with the human maids to create the potion of domination your players kept finding on this adventure. Here lies an interesting situation if the human mage will be saved. He will tell the players that he was kidnapped and forced to assist the Aboleths with their work. Meeting though other rescued slaves down the road, they will cast some light into his stories, informing the players that he is actually part of the gang that kidnapped them and brought them here, the Illithid quarters. Home to many Illithids residing here, along with the two priests that they are the close consultants of the Grand Savant. The Raveners, an elite mercenary group of evil NPCs serving the Aboleths for years now. The slave pens, with many fighting hands ready to help if freed, along with vital information that if the players might find, might change the ending of this adventure. Krellner, here, an abducted wizard, has many important information about this place. He knows that the towers can be destroyed by opposite schools of magic, and that they must be fully destroyed in order to gain access to the Grand Savant. Something that, if not followed, might lead to the death of your party, as we will see later on this video. We have the embassy of the Betezu. If you have the tannery from the previous adventure with you, this is a really interesting bit. The Betezu are intrigued by the Aboleths, so they have sent emissaries with magic and slaves as offerings. They spy on each other, but the Aboleths do not want to have such powerful enemies so close in the completion of the towers, so allowing them to be there along with the roster of deadly monsters. The players can find a book that describes the Blood War, which is a great opportunity to give a nice introduction about demons from the Abyss and devils from the Nine Hells to your players, especially if you're planning to run an adventure to those planes of existence. Also, there's a terrifying trapped chest that can be encountered here. Anyone touching it, which is not Palestron the Betezu, triggers an acid storm in the room and transforms him into a lemur, and at once plane shifts him into the Nine Hells. This is the best of hooks to go on the amazingly epic adventure A Paladin in Hell. Well, in this case it's gonna be a lemur in hell, but potato, patata, which you can find a detailed guide here, by the way, about the Paladin. Not the lemur, that is. Still, very powerful allies can be found on the least expected places. A Deva can be freed from a flask here, willing to help the group thrice, while he deals with his own business in this unholy place. Palestrin, if not attacked directly, he will not be offensive. He wants to avoid conflict, of course. His plan is for the players to cause havoc and make the Aboleths ask for his help. A help coming in return of valuable information about this place. What are those towers doing? How do they work? From what are they made of? So the RP with him is open-ended, depending on the mood of your players. The Betezu is smart enough to know when not to pick a fight, when one is not needed. Moving on, we find the Tower of Treasures, the vault of the Aboleths with a plethora of enemies and powerful magical items that your players will most definitely need to end this fight. Leaving us with the center of it all, the 4 towers of domination surrounding the Grand Savant's tower, immersed in 12 feet of water, filled with Ixen protecting it. The towers of domination will be the last stand of the Aboleths, the only way of disrupting their plans and reaching the Grand Savant, the leader of it all. The towers have similar structure. Each of the towers have 3 floors, and on the top floor there's a sphere of pure respective magic. Each sphere has some specific magical force units. For the sphere to be broken and the tower to be incapacitated, the players must attack with the opposite schools of magic. So, alteration being attacked by abjuration, necromancy with illusion, summoning with divination, and finally enchantment with invocation. When the sphere is lowered 25 magical force units, the entrance to the central Grand Savant tower will be opened from the wall of force that cannot be disintegrated. But the entrance to the floor that the Grand Savant resides will only be open if the magical force units of each tower are lowered to 0. So if the players leave at 25 to get inside the central tower and won't follow or have found actually the advice of Krenler, things are looking really grim for them. At the same time, the Aboleths residing on the top floor can tap on the sphere's magical force and use its magical powers to attack the players with devastating magical attacks. The Savant Aboleths have some more powerful guardians protecting them, making this fight even more difficult. Managing to break all of the towers will give access to the last floor where the Grand Savant resides. This is the culmination of the entire adventure. This is an almost impossibly difficult location, and the Game Master must study it well before running it. The monsters must be relentless, intelligent, and create an actually epic climax for this saga. All of the Savant Aboleths that might have escaped from other areas, they can be found here on the central tower. When the tower will be breached, all of the Aboleths of the city will flock here to defend it. On the ground level, there is an altar of the Blood Queen, where all the sacrifices take place. Multiple defenders will be here as Savant Aboleth is before the altar paired with 2 dominated human fighters, some Fomorian giants and some Zuzu zombies. On the second floor, the Black Ceiling Chamber, when Savant Aboleth stand guardian with 4 dominated humans and 6 zombies. There's a spiral of magical energy in the room that the Aboleths will try to send the dominated players to instantly transform them into zombies in their command. On the third floor, Darlakanand's laboratory. Him alone can be found here, standing in a throne casting Time Stop, a powerful Dero Savant of 18 levels. Summoning his Efreti, he will try to end the attackers. Here, the players will find the entrance to the last floor of the tower. The lair of the Grand Savant will need all of the other towers to be destroyed for the players to enter. Having all the attackers in the city heading here while the initial attack took place on the tower will make it almost impossible for the players to leave this tower to head to the other 4 dominating towers and reach their magical force units to 0 from 25. So let's hope that your players really do their investigation before heading into this last central tower. Getting into the last floor, we find the lair of the Grand Savant. Here, an albino Aboleth can be found, so vast and bloated that the players will have difficulty realizing it's an Aboleth. 20 zombies surround the beast. The beast attacks with only spells, and above it there's a huge magical ball that resides, using it to try to destroy the players. The Grand Savant is easy to hit, but when struck, fluids pour out of its body and the attackers are being damaged by acid. Many of the other enemies will be found here. If the Grand Savant is reduced to 0 hit points, the obese body begins to wither and gargle, as if a gargantuan maggot is about to explode. The PCs have 2 rounds to exit the room. The entire top floor blows apart. Anyone inside it is killed instantly. Huge amounts of treasure are being released by the explosion. All creatures in the city are looking confused, even attacking each other. The PCs have 5 rounds to pick whatever they like, and the City of Shaboath begins to sink back into the Sunless Sea. As they will head to escape the city, the 4 towers can be seen crumbling into nothingness. All of the Aboleths scream and cry, and the City of Shaboath becomes a madhouse with creatures killing each other. There is a long way back home, No creature will even think to attack your players. Have them enjoy the respect of anything they stumble upon, making attacks, and then have them stop when they realize that those are the people that messed with the Aboleths. Your players should have a reputation on the surface by now. Their tales will spread among their cities like wildfire. Powerful people and organizations will approach them, definitely look into them with interest. As I said before, every ending is just the opportunity for new beginnings, and your players earned to have a great start for the next chapter. Make them lords, give them castles, have them rule cities, and just as they're getting comfortable, remind them that in the world of fantasy, that in the world of Dungeons and Dragons, no one is ever safe. Until next time, this was the RPG Lore Master, and welcome to my table.